Hi everyone. Thank you for joining me again for AppScan Tuesdays. This is episode number 55. And we've just finished the series of the introductory to AppScan, to ASOC that I did. So I can bring my guests again. And today I have Florin again.
Hello,
So,
everyone. Hey, Ethan.
hi Florin. And Florin, we discussed while I was doing the series, and you said that you want to show the audience a little bit more about what they can do with static analysis. So we will start today. What are you going to show us?
The goal today is to show what you would call a bit of an intro to faster static analysis in AppScan on Cloud. We've been spending a lot of time with our customers, understanding what they're going through and looking at how they're scanning and what they're scanning. And we realized there's a few tips they can use to improve their scans. It doesn't take a lot of time. Everything is code, which developers like. I hope one day we'll have coffee as code, which is not Java, but it's something better than that. But the idea is to teach developers how to do a quick configuration, avoid scanning things they're not interested in, and potentially also focus their scans on specific areas of an application, depending on what they're working on or whatever else they're dealing with at the time.
Cool. And just to avoid confusion, I mean, like I showed, you can do a point and shoot in AppScan. You can do a point and shoot in ASOC. It will work. What we want to show you is more of maybe advanced, not really advanced ways to get more, especially if you want to scan a lot of applications, to scan many times, scan part of your pipeline. You want to make it fast. So this is where Florin is coming in today.
Correct. I think we spoke plugins, Jenkins, IDE plugins. We spoke about Maven and Gradle. Those are still some valid ways of doing things. This other way of looking at scanning is, again, focusing on allowing you to reuse a lot of those plugins as you do. But I think this is the one that talks more about automation. If you're doing a lot of automation, I think you're very familiar with building pipeline scripts. You're very familiar to doing everything as code. You maybe don't like doing things with a GUI. We have AppScan Go to help you with the configuration as well. And it's just, as far as I can see it's a nice and elegant way of dealing with this initial requirement of focusing your scans down on stuff that you really, really care about. And as we said, this gets more into being more surgical with your results, being more surgical with what you're scanning. Point and shoot still works fine for most people. You can just throw away the stuff you don't care about afterwards. A lot of it will be thrown away by us with the IFA. So this is just another way to bake a scone, I guess.
And Florin mentioned, so I'll include a video on Florin's side on AppScan Go, which I recorded with Neil Kreinberg at the time. And now we will jump to the demo.
I think demo is what I'm most interested in. So what I did now is I kind of started a scan. So you'll see me coming into my my lovely virtual machine and running with a scan. So what I was trying to do is kind of do this out of the box analysis. And the reason I'm showing you this, I want you to first understand when you might want to look into some of this configuration, and then explain how to deal with it. So in my little demo, I'm playing with WebGoat. I just issue an out-of-the-box command, which said AppScan prepare. Our knowledge is quite extensive. We exclude a lot of stuff when we do our analysis, but there might still be some things that show up, new libraries that we don't know about, which we might end up including in our scans. In order to optimize your scanning, in order to optimize the static analysis, we always recommend that you have a look at a configuration file. And the way this works is pretty straightforward. You run your first scan, you look at the results. If you're happy with them, which I think happens in a very large number of cases, you keep going with it. The other set is you run a scan, you're happy with it, but maybe you want it to be a bit faster. That is when you start looking at creating different configuration. In my case, I issue my first command and I can start looking at the classes and the files that are being included for my analysis. And I see in here some interesting stuff called org.os.webgoat. As far as I'm concerned, this is a really valid target for me to scan. But I'm also seeing some additional stuff. I'm seeing some other libraries, some third-party libraries that might not be so interesting for me to perform static analysis. It's important to understand with AppScan that you can perform static analysis on third-party libraries, but you can also perform software composition analysis on them. While there is value to run static analysis on third-party, a lot of the times you don't have access to the source code yourself. It's really hard to try and validate them. So that's why when we're saying do static analysis, always focus on your code, is code you control, code you can deal with, and everything that's third party will automatically be doing software composition analysis with AppScan. So where do you start with this? As always, my recommendation is go to our lovely documentation. We have a documentation online, which I like to keep open. In our documentation, there is information about how to configure an RX file generation with the CLI. And always start with a basic template. The first thing you'll want to do, open your favorite tool and paste in the basic configuration. And then you can start working with this one. What we'd want to do is decide what you want to scan. Do you want to scan only the outputs, or do you want to build some of the code yourself? If you're dealing with .NET, this kind of makes the difference between do you want to scan a solution file, point us to a solution file, or do you want to work with DLLs? In my case, I'm just going to point to the jar file, so I don't have to worry about this. And the next thing I have to do is point to a path. This can be one of several things. It can be a directory, or it can be a file. In my case, I have the jar file, so I can point directly to it. If I want to scan multiple files, let's say if this is a collection of microservices that I might want to scan at the same time, which usually I don't recommend with microservices, you want to scan them one at a time, you can point to a local folder. So this would be something like a dot, and it will pick everything from the root level. If you're dealing with an automation environment, what I do recommend is point it to your build outputs. If it's just a jar file, you can directly copy and paste the name inside there. But if you're dealing with something more than that, if you're dealing with a collection of files, a collection of microservices, point to your point to your build output, and you will have your information in there. So the first thing I had is nearly done. I pointed to the application I want to scan, and now I can start doing some additional validation. As you go through here, you'll see a series of attributes you can work with. The one that's very interesting when you're dealing with Java is something that's called namespaces. And namespaces allow you to focus scanning specifically on the packages you are working with. So in my case, I want to do a packages include. And you'll see in here an example, so make sure you add this to your custom build info. So in my case, I'll just paste this one in here. And if you remember, when we looked at our output, we saw a very interesting class in here, which is org.owasp.webgoat, which is pretty sure what we want to scan. So what I can do is I can copy this one here. If you want to do a collection of packages, it might be that you're working on a joint project, or you took a project from an old friend of yours or from a different project and the namespace changed over time. You can actually add multiple namespaces in here, and that will allow you to work with all of them. The alternative to this is if you just want to remove stuff, you can use package excludes. And similar to how you do the includes, you will list all the namespaces you want to remove from your application.
And we already have our exclusion list, so we are covering those that we know that are used at third parties. But if I can summarize what you showed, the first one was don't analyze these other jars that I have in the folder, just focus on this jar or this var or this component. And now with the items, with the components that you're actually evaluating, ignore blah or focus only on this namespace that we care about.
Correct. The main one here is focus on this specific namespace.
Yeah, and it's easier to know, I believe it's easier to know what I want to analyze in my code because it's my namespace versus everything that I want you to not care about because I'm using multiple open source projects and they might have dependencies on other that I didn't even notice that are included. So the include option is much more accurate and much more controllable, basically.
I agree. It's always much stronger to do the includes. Additionally, this allows you to, if you want to think in a way, split your projects. If you have a very big monolithic application and you don't want to go through the whole process of scanning everything, our demo application has an API part to it, as well as a regular web application, an enterprise Java. You can go ahead and you can isolate the API part of it by saying, hey, scan org.oasp.webgo. In this case, API, and it would focus on that part of your application. So it's a nice way to control what you are scanning. Additional to this, you can work with more includes and excludes. Packages work really well for Java, but might not work so well for other projects. If you're dealing with Python, if you're dealing with Node.js or AppScan or Golang, you might have a different way of dealing with files. So what you can do is you can use this include and exclude tags, which allow you to include, again, specific files or folders. It basically looks for a pattern. If it sees the pattern in the path of a file, it will decide to remove those files. In my case, what I usually do, just for a good measure, I want to exclude everything that is test, mainly because I'm not interested in performing static analysis on code that is not production yet. And the benefit of doing this, it allows you to, again, kind of shave a few seconds after a scan. And I know if you're doing automation, you're really excited about getting results back and overall optimize your static experience. Once you're done dealing with your basic configuration, what you can try doing is saving it. If you want a really smooth experience to work with your application and to automate this, I do recommend saving this next to your source code. Try to build your configuration from the root path of your project and put it next to your code in your code repository. So whenever you're taking the project through something like Jenkins, you're taking the project through one of the other plugins you have, or you just point the CLI to it, it will work in a very, very effective way. In my case, this would be the root of my project. I will want to save this one as a specific format. I will ask you not to do it for me, so I'll call this AppScan config.xml. And I'll save my file. It's important to know that whenever the CLI or on the plugin sees these configuration files, and when I mention plugins, these are the automation plugins, the CI/CD plugins, Azure, Jenkins, Bamboo, Urban Code, they will honor this file. And it will make it very easy for you to keep that scan very focused. So in my case, the original target was about 658 files. So what I'll now do, I'll issue the same command again, AppScan prepare, and we should see a pretty significant change in the number of files I'm scanning. And the benefit of this, it only takes a few minutes for it to go through the documentation if you're going from scratch. But in terms of scan time, you will see a pretty good performance improvement. And also when the results come back, they're going to be much cleaner. They're only going to point to your source code. It's source code you control, you can strengthen, you can secure. It makes the overall experience a lot smoother.
There are many that don't like wizard approach. They feel that the wizard is not for them because they are developers and they can code everything and they can write it. So here you go. Here's the XML. Just fill it. Tell us exactly what you want us to look at, and we are not to look at anything else. And as Florin showed, much faster and much more focused and accurate.
And at the end of it, you get a very, very accurate scan. It's important to mention that when you're dealing with build environments, if you're doing things through Maven Gradle, we do have ways to optimize this, but there will be cases when you're kind of pointing to a specific binary, a specific output, and without a lot of knowledge, it's hard to make a difference between what's yours and what's not. But this puts that control in your hands and makes it very easy for you to handle this approach. Additionally, when this is done, all the files that are being scanned are logged. You can download a list of the files that were included in the scan. So if anyone is concerned about you not doing something okay, can be easily alleviated. They can see what they have access to here, and they can deal with the inspection and make sure that you scanned everything they wanted to.
And of course, if you are not familiar with the application that you're scanning, because development team gave you this WAR file, you don't have to do this. The point and shoot will work. It will take longer, but it makes also a lot of sense because if you're not part of the development team, you're probably not running it as part of your pipeline. You're doing it as one-off. Shaving those extra minutes or even a lot of extra minutes is not going to be that significant. but you can if you have the information. So that's the goal here. Okay, bringing you back here. Thanks, Florin. I think it was a good overview of what people can do manually. We showed how to do it with the wizard. We also mentioned before that people can actually ignore all of it, and AppScan will figure it out on its own, but it won't be optimized. And let's be honest, if you want to run it as part of your pipeline, you want to make it as nimble as possible, as fast as possible, do a little extra work on the onboarding, as Florin mentioned, and you can save a lot, and your developers will be happy with you. Any thoughts, Florin, that you want to add?
I think if you always have feedback, reach out to us. We're always happy to hear more about it, how to help tailor your use cases. And like Keaton said, look at this. If you see one of those really strong MMA fighters or boxers, you know they're in shape. You look at them and you know they're in shape. But just before the fight, they go for that extra 2 days without water just so they can shave a few kilos. Look at this process in a similar way. And as you do this, it becomes much easier for you to get the scans done in the timeline that you want. You get more accurate results focused specifically in the code you're interested in, and we really think it will make your overall static analysis experience just overall much more enjoyable.
So to summarize, if you want to prepare your ASOC SAST scan to the fight day, do the extra effort of onboarding it, spend a few more minutes, and you can shave the effort of scanning to a smaller amount of time and more focused. So thanks, Florin. Thank you very much for joining. Until next time.
Till next
Bye-bye.
time.